It was a relationship born on the battlefield.
They had served together in Iraq. He was a handsome guy, and ladies liked the way he looked in a uniform.
She saw herself being an officer. She saw herself married. She saw herself one day with kids.
But those dreams are shattered when a string of mysterious disappearances rocks their tight-knit Southern community.
I've been calling you for several days, and you ain't return my phone call.
You need to call somebody and let somebody know something, baby. Anybody heard from you?
You got two young women going missing between a week of one another.
This was a successful individual, young, her whole future in front of her.
She received her master's August the 12th, and, it just didn't make sense. 4 days later, you gone.
But as this investigation picks up steam, a deadly discovery will bring everyone's worst fear to fruition.
Oh, my God, this is a young girl.
This is a case that you don't normally see people that do this unless you're Jeffrey Dahmer or somebody that has a very twisted personality.
I hope it's not that girl. Oh, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. He was a demon walking the earth.
Thursday, August 23rd, 2012. It's an early summer morning in a peaceful neighborhood just north of Columbia, South Carolina. But on this day, there's a buzz of excitement in the air.
It was the first day of school, so you had buses back on the road, you had kids walking to school, you had parents walking their kids to school, taking their kids to school.
At a home on the north side of town, a young mother named Kristen Brown is preparing to do just that.
Come on, get buckled up. Mommy's going to be so late for work.
Okay, Mom.
Did you get your lunch?
Here's this woman, typical morning, getting ready to take her kid to school. While departing, she looks in the neighbor's yard, and what do you see?
Hold on.
There was a body in the front yard.
She was face down in the front yard.
Moments later, Kristen's frantic 911 call reaches area dispatchers.
I just found a dead female, black young female, right next door to my house.
You just found what, ma'am?
A dead, black, young female in my neighbor's front yard.
She was in shock, and for a good reason.
It's crazy. Nice neighborhood. It's the first day of school. Excited about the school year, excited about doing new things, and someone leaves a body in the front yard of a home. It's crazy.
Even worse, Kristen fears she might recognize the victim.
Jesus Christ, I hope it's not this little girl. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus.
5 days earlier, a 15-year-old girl named Gabby Swainson had disappeared just a few miles from this location. Her disappearance was all over the news, and police issued a massive manhunt. Kristen had every reason to believe that it was her.
We've got help on the way, ma'am, okay? Just try to stay calm and help be there soon.
Jesus Christ.
But as authorities race to the scene, they know Gabby isn't the only young woman to have gone missing in Columbia during the past 24 hours.
The other young woman's name was Almanita Smith. She was a beautiful 26-year-old woman who was a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army and a master's student. Her family had reported her missing 24 hours earlier.
But just who was this person lying lifeless in the yard? And how had she gotten there? The answer will tear a hole in a family's heart and bring investigators face to face with a monster.
In 21 years of law enforcement, that was absolutely the worst thing that I'd ever heard.
Born in Tuskegee, Alabama in 1986, it was clear there was always something special about Almanita Smith.
She was very outgoing, very bright, compassionate, very smart, had quick wit, and was pretty much a born leader.
Anything she put her mind to and her heart to it, she did it. She was just that go-getter.
In fact, by the time Almanita hit high school, this doe-eyed beauty displayed a drive and maturity well beyond her years.
She was your typical teenager, but when it was time for her to take on life seriously, she took it on seriously, and she had goals. She had things that she wanted to do.
She was just stellar in school.
I mean, that was just her thing. That was real big to her. She was on the basketball team. She was on the track team. She was a wavette or a dance squad for the band. She played tennis.
She actually won homecoming queen. She was turning into this gorgeous little 5'3" woman.
And Almanita believed it was her destiny to serve in the United States military. After high school, she enlisted in the Army.
She saw herself being an officer. She saw herself married. She saw herself one day with kids. But more than anything, she saw herself making sure her mom and her dad were taken care of.
True to form, in just a few short years, Almanita rose to the rank of staff sergeant while earning a college degree and serving 2 dangerous tours of duty in Iraq.
She was very driven, very motivated. It's like, what's the point of doing it if you can't be the best at doing it?
After Almanita returned from Iraq, she settled in Columbia, South Carolina for grad school. She joined the Army Reserves, earned an MBA, and began working on another master's in education.
She's a homeowner by the age of 24 with 2 degrees, MBAs. That's very impressive for someone her age.
She wanted to retire out of the Army. She went to school for business. Once she finished with her military career, she wanted to open up her own little club/restaurant. She just wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Although Almanita dated and had boyfriends over the years, she mostly concentrated on her career and education.
She dated, but that was secondary. She spent most of her time working on herself.
But in the spring of 2012, the blossoming beauty ran into a ghost from her past. 27-year-old California native Marcus Bailey.
Almanita Smith?
Marcus, hey.
Hey, how you doing?
I've been good. How are you?
She had met him during a tour in Iraq.
Here's this guy, Marcus Bailey, another veteran. Handsome, the guy looks great in his uniform, but moreover, he could relate to her. They had something in common, and that was serving in the U.S. Army.
He told Almanita that he was still in the Army and that he was a drill sergeant stationed nearby at Fort Jackson.
So, any plans?
Well, I always had dreams of being a club DJ.
When she met him, you know, he was doing well. He was nice. He's in the military as well. Very sweet, very focused, just a nice guy.
Over the next few months, Almanita and Marcus did their best to stay in touch.
When they would go to parties, they would see each other and talk, casual conversation. But she told me that they wanted to be in a relationship.
I think there was just a period where she met him and kind of moved fast.
Almanita has this nice home, 4 bedrooms. She's 24 years old. She's got everybody but somebody to share this with. He needed a place to stay. She was lonely. They were dating. It only made sense in her mind that, hey, why don't you come live with me?
While it seemed like Almanita's life was a fantasy come true, the summer of 2012 brought with it an even more tangible accomplishment. On August 12th, she earned her master's degree in education from Columbia College.
She had just graduated with her master's degree, and the following week, she was supposed to go through an officer program.
It seemed like life was coming up roses for Almanita. That's why what happened next was so impossible to believe.
Her daddy and her mama was calling. The school had been calling, and that is when they realized something was wrong.
In the summer of 2012, Army reservist Almanita Smith was on the fast track to success in Columbia, South Carolina.
She had just graduated with her master's degree, and she was a top performer. She had the backing of her chain of command. They wanted to see her do great. They knew that she can do great. They just wanted to see exactly what the future held for her.
She was so driven. There are a lot of 25-year-olds that ain't doing nothing. And there are a lot of 40-year-olds that haven't completed or even remotely did half of what she had accomplished.
A string of accomplishments that Almanita happily shared with her love interest, Marcus Bailey.
She had reconnected with Marcus in the spring of 2012. They started dating, and he eventually moved into Almanita's home.
Everything was going great for her.
But that good life was about to take an unexpected and mysterious turn. It begins the morning of Wednesday, August 22nd. Almanita is scheduled to be in a class for officer candidate school, but she never arrives.
Whatever she set forth, all her goals, she wanted to accomplish them. So if there was someplace she had to be on time, she was going to be there on time. Her classmates and the program was calling her, trying to find out where she was. It was unheard of.
Hey, Almanita, you weren't in class today, so I was seeing what was going on. Give me a call back.
That was completely unlike her. She was not going to not go to school. She was a stickler for her responsibilities and what she needed to do. She would have not gone to school unless something had happened.
Almanita's classmates aren't the only ones concerned about her whereabouts.
Her dad had been calling her, and her dad couldn't get her. The school had been calling for Nita. They couldn't get her.
It was extremely out of character for her not to be in contact with her parents. Like, I know she talked to her daddy every night, like every day.
By that afternoon, there was still no sign of Almanita. It's then that her father, Harold Davis, makes a decision.
I called Nita's mom, and I called Richland County Sheriff Department. Ma'am, my name is Harold Davis. I'm calling from Tuskegee, Alabama. I have a daughter. My name is Almanita Smith. I haven't talked to her since Friday, and we normally talk every day or every other day. And I want to know if I could get someone to go by our home and check and see what's going on.
Okay, Mr. Davis, we're going to send an officer out there to see if they can try to make contact with her.
They sent a deputy out, goes to the house, knocks on the door. Marcus answers the door.
Hi, I'm Officer O'Donnell. We're here to do a welfare check at this address.
For who?
For an Almanita Smith. You mind if we come on in?
Of course.
Are you aware where she is?
Well, she was here early today, but she went shopping. I wasn't aware that she was missing.
He was at the home by himself. He said that Almanita had left earlier that day at about 11 o'clock and had gone shopping. He said that she received a phone call from someone. He didn't know who. He said she went into a dark-colored Toyota and left. He didn't see the driver. The driver didn't come in. The driver just beeped the horn from outside and drove off.
Marcus says, well, she's still not back. Matter of fact, and putting it on the speaker, he tries to give her a call, doesn't answer the phone. Then he even sends a text message, but yet no response.
Do you mind if we look around?
Yeah, of course.
She did a cursory search of the residence. There at that point, didn't appear to be anything out of the ordinary.
While Marcus is talking to them, he remains calm, talks to them in a normal tone, and officers being trained to spot signs of domestic violence or struggle. When they looked at Marcus, there were no signs. There were no cuts. There were no bruises, no scratches. So things appeared to be as normal.
Well, thanks. If you hear from Almanita, do you mind having her call her father? He's pretty concerned about her.
Yeah, of course.
But just what had happened to Almanita? As the hours tick by that evening, no one seems to have an answer.
I called a couple of her friends, and they hadn't seen her.
At this point, nobody knows who this potential guy in this dark car is. Family doesn't know. Marcus doesn't know. We're just following a story down a rabbit hole.
She would have not gone away with someone without someone knowing. I mean, she would have called.
But for officers at the Richland County Sheriff's Department, there's further cause for concern. Almanita isn't the only young African-American woman to have gone missing in Columbia this week.
At this same time, there was a missing teenager that had been missing in the neighborhood.
5 days earlier, a young girl named Gabby Swainson had disappeared. She was all over the news. This was a reoccurring story. Nobody knew where she was.
She had been missing for a while. We had believed that she had been kidnapped by someone that's close to the home.
They had organized searches, manhunts. People were out.
These two disturbing disappearances are connected. At this point, no one knows for certain.
Amanita's friends and family were deeply concerned. What are the odds of two young African American women going missing in the same area in the same week?
But in less than 24 hours, a sickening discovery will close a chapter on one of these two missing person cases and open the door to a baffling murder investigation.
It was a shocker to me. I got a phone call from my sister, and it was awful.
That was the worst day of my life.
In less than a week, two young African American women have gone missing in Columbia, South Carolina. The first person was a 15-year-old cheerleader named Gabby Swainson. Then, just 5 days after her disappearance, 26-year-old Amanita Smith, a beloved Army veteran, vanished as well.
Richland County is kind of a small town atmosphere. It's a very small town. People know each other. People care for each other. That's one of the things that we're known for. And you have something like this happen, it scared the community.
It was a real sense of helplessness. I didn't know what to do.
Amanita's father, Harold, is less indecisive. On the night of August 22, 2012, he makes plans to drive up from his home in Alabama to search for his daughter.
I just felt so bad. I was going to leave. I started to leave that night, but I really wasn't prepared. So I was going to leave the next morning.
Harold and his family spend a restless evening in Alabama. But on August 23rd, before they can leave town, a discovery 300 miles away changes everything.
At 6:45 a.m. on August 23rd, a woman named Kristen Brown was leaving her home in North Columbia to take her daughter to school when she saw a body lying in her neighbor's yard.
Kristen's ensuing 911 call leaves little speculation as to the identity of the female victim.
Oh my God, this is a young girl. Hey, we're getting everyone on the way, all right? And she's a cute girl. Oh my God.
She thought maybe that was the missing person that we were looking for. This was the missing teen.
Everybody thought it was Gabby Swainson.
That's the first thing that came to my head. We found her, unfortunately.
Oh my God.
But just before first responders arrive at the scene, a man races from the front door of 613 Heron Glen Drive. It's Marcus Bailey.
Marcus, he comes outside, and his reaction immediately is he starts sobbing. He's emotional.
Baby, wake up. Baby.
She was face down in the front yard. He rolled her over and was able to recognize her.
The victim isn't Gabby Swainson as everyone fears, but Marcus's girlfriend, Amanita Smith.
She's laying face down. He goes out and throws a blanket over the body. He was having chest pains, having a reaction to seeing the corpse.
Chain on up, bud. Come with me.
He was having some kind of an attack. They took him to the hospital to get him evaluated.
With Amanita's grieving boyfriend now removed from the scene, investigators take their first look at their victim. And what they see isn't pretty.
It was very hot outside, and Amanita was in this state of decomposition.
The body was in a decomp state of excessive swelling, especially around the face. The tongue was swelled out of her mouth. Her limbs, you could tell, had an excessive amount of fluid in them, along with the abdomen area and the legs.
Everything starts to decompose at a different rate, but it's you can tell the process is in motion. Again, it's South Carolina in the summer. It was August. It's hot.
Any obvious sign of how she was killed?
But Amanita's state of decomposition presents investigators with a problem.
They couldn't get a definite cause of death. Probably it could have been a strangulation. She wasn't stabbed. She wasn't shot.
And then there's the question of how Amanita's body ended up where it did. Could the mystery man she allegedly left her home with the day before have intentionally placed her here?
This is an odd case. This is a case that you don't normally see people that do this unless you're Jeffrey Dahmer or somebody that has a very twisted personality.
It suggests some kind of message. Why would someone take her away and cause her harm and then bring her back and lay her in the front yard without there being some kind of significance to that?
While Amanita's body is transported to the Richland County Medical Examiner's office for an autopsy, news of her death has reached friends and family.
Her death, great loss. It did exactly like a tsunami, an earthquake. She touched so many people's lives. It Devastating.
I was called at 9 o'clock that morning and drove straight to her house. I mean, it was a surreal experience for me.
While those close to Amanita begin to converge at her home, Detective Martin heads to the hospital to have a chat with Marcus Bailey.
At that point, he said that he wanted to speak with us.
I know this is a very difficult time for you, but are you comfortable answering some questions right now?
Yes, sir. I'll try.
He said Amanita was a really good person. She had just graduated from college, and she was in the process of being selected for an officer position in the Army.
While Marcus seems genuinely upset by Amanita's death, investigators want to hear his story again.
We asked him the last time he saw her. Again, he said he saw her on the 22nd at about 11:30, and he said that she had left with this mysterious person.
I didn't really get a good look at his face.
So you're in a relationship with Amanita together, yet you're okay with her going off with a strange man?
It's kind of complicated.
He said that they had an open relationship. Sometimes they would be together, sometimes they'd be with other people. And she was allowed to kind of do whatever she wanted to do.
She still allowed me to live there as long as I paid the rent.
But it's what Marcus says next that's the most alarming detail to investigators.
He said, well, she was picking up men on Craigslist. Men were buying her things.
The obvious fear is that maybe Amanita met somebody online and that this person isn't just responsible for her death, but Gabby Swainson's disappearance as well.
It's not unusual for people online to exaggerate the truth about themselves a bit, let alone be totally opposite of who they really are.
But had this beautiful Army veteran really waded into the dangerous waters of online dating? That answer and more was about to swamp this investigation, leaving detectives to sort out the carnage of ill-chosen love.
This isn't what you do to people you love. This isn't how you treat people you love.
On August 23, 2012, a family's worst nightmare comes to fruition when missing 26-year-old Army reservist Amanita Smith is found dead in the front yard of her home.
She had a bright future. Anything she wanted to do, she could have done.
It sickens you because you think about the victim, and she had a very successful future. She had a very big future. She was doing so many things to make herself better, to prepare for her life.
It's a life that everyone agrees has ended far too soon, making detectives more determined than ever to catch Amanita's killer. But having just interviewed her boyfriend, Marcus Bailey, identifying this individual may not be easy.
Marcus said he and Amanita were in an open relationship and that she was meeting other people online. He said Amanita left the day before her death with a man he had never seen before.
Back at the crime scene, investigators begin questioning Amanita's friends and family for the first time. When investigators ask about Amanita's dating life, they find it difficult to believe that the straight-laced overachiever would have been so reckless.
She don't meet strangers. She don't meet people on dating sites, Facebook, Instagram, or any of those things. That's not who she was.
As for her relationship with Marcus, they say at first Amanita had a hard time resisting the charms of her strapping soldier.
I think she met him, and he's one of those people where if that's your thing, he kind of looked right on paper.
But others say their first impression of Marcus left much to be desired.
I can honestly say when I met this character, I was not happy. And I told her that. I thought he was a loser.
The way he dressed, the way he drank all the time, the way he interacted with her. I mean, he was just a thug. That's the bottom line. He was a thug.
But Amanita apparently saw something in Marcus that she liked, and she wasn't one to back down from a challenge.
She has a very good heart, very big heart. Maybe she can help him change. That is the impression that I got, that she could help him change.
For the first few months, friends say it seemed like their lives were on solid ground. But then Amanita learned the truth about Marcus's military record.
She found out about some stuff that he was keeping from her about his past.
The military is really a small world. It's like 2 degrees of separation.
And the truth of the matter, friends say, is that Marcus had been living a lie all along.
Marcus Bailey had been dishonorably discharged for fraternization, meaning that he was having relationships with the enlisted personnel that he was supposed to train.
He was sleeping with privates. When you're a drill sergeant, you are not supposed to have any type of sexual contact at all.
A fact Marcus failed to share with Almanita.
Last text she sent me about him, she said, I found out that he was not who he say he was.
He had let her believe that he was being demoted, but he had already been kicked out in the whole nine because, the military doesn't play that anymore.
I heard that he was actually getting up, putting on his uniform every day like he was going to work. And he was still representing himself as if he was an active duty soldier.
He got kicked out. He didn't have anywhere to go. He couldn't find a job. He wasn't working or anything.
But besides misrepresenting his own work and military record, it turns out Marcus had another secret. And this one, friends say, was a doozy.
Who's this Janelle that keeps texting you?
Nobody.
Nobody. I don't believe you. Who is she?
Marcus was in fact married to a woman that lived in Colombia.
Your wife?
Although he was estranged from his wife, he had a young son, and she was pregnant with their second child.
When were you going to tell me that?
It's over with.
It's over with.
Yes.
She started to see him and what was going on with him for who he was and had decided she didn't want that to be a part of her life.
Come on, baby.
Don't baby me. We're done. You can pack your stuff and you can go.
When she finally found out, she wanted him to move out.
Where am I go, huh?
But she felt bad because he didn't have a place to go. So she just let him stay there, move into the other room until he was able to get on his feet.
She was trying to help him.
As for the contention that Almanita and Marcus might have had an open relationship, her family doesn't buy it.
Never. Never. So either she was with you or she was without you.
To investigators, Marcus sounds like a cancer in Almanita's life. But that still didn't mean their topsy-turvy relationship had culminated in violence. Then, on August 24th, detectives receive Almanita's autopsy report.
4 to 7 days.
Her body had been dead for days. She had been in that state of decomposition. It just wasn't possible that she was alive and well and walking the day before at noon. The lack of the insects being on her suggests that she wasn't outside. It looks more like she was stored in a house.
But as another piece of this investigation falls into place, there's a far darker chapter of this story that's yet to be told. One so terrible, it's unforgettable.
It's like looking at the devil, like soulless, like there was nothing there.
An autopsy report has just found that 26-year-old military reservist Almanita Smith died at least 3 days before her body was discovered in the front yard of her Columbia, South Carolina home, a fact that seems to contradict Almanita's on-again, off-again boyfriend, Marcus Bailey's statement to police.
He said he saw her on the 22nd at about 11:30, and she was getting dressed up and leaving the house in this mysterious car. The position of the body and where fluid was inconsistent with what he was saying.
But phone records offer investigators another insight into Almanita's love life.
We tried to follow up with, well, who would this person be, this mysterious phone call? Well, there wasn't a phone call there that came in.
In fact, what Almanita's phone records do show is that her family and friends became concerned about her whereabouts as early as August 17th.
We're trying to get in contact with you. I hope everything's okay. Yeah, but need to call me back. 2 days. This is ridiculous. If you're going to go on a disciplinary act, you need to let everybody know.
Yeah, you need to call somebody and let somebody know something, baby. Anybody heard from you, everybody's calling around. You let somebody know if you're all right.
And we believe that she was last seen on the 16th, late hours of the 16th.
But just what transpired between the time Almanita had disappeared and the time her body was found on August 23rd bank and credit card records.
So we've got charges on her card during the time the autopsy report says that she's dead, including one in North Carolina. What do you think of the chances? We got some videos.
Yep.
When police review the security cam footage, it's not Almanita they see on a 6-day shopping spree.
On video, we have images of Marcus using the credit cards.
There were clothing receipts where he had gone and made some purchases with her credit card. I believe there was a couple other receipts there. There were ATM receipts.
Then on August 19th, Marcus's 27th birthday, he really dropped some cash.
He went to a nightclub. When he started spending money at this nightclub, The bill was close to $500.
He had a birthday party for himself. Bought out sections in the club and bought out bottles and was just buying bottles for people.
The next night, he takes them to North Carolina. And again, he's using Almanita's credit cards. And they go into a nightclub and they spend another large sum of money. And he takes everybody out to breakfast.
And this was during the period that her father couldn't get a hold of her.
In light of their growing suspicion, detectives decide to execute a search of Almanita's home. Almost immediately, they notice something very odd.
There was a lot of air fresheners. A lot of air fresheners in there.
You're almost smacked in the face with this air freshener. There was just so many different smells and coverings going on in this room. They were competition. It was not so much nauseating, but it was just overwhelming when you first walked in the door.
But underneath all that industrial aroma is a smell seasoned investigators are all too familiar with.
You smell that? Yeah.
It was a decomp odor. It was the smell of death.
There's nothing like it. There's no mistaking it. You smell it once, you'll know again 20 years down the road. When you smell it, you'll know. You can't mask it.
When I opened up the dryer, there was a blanket, just like the one that had been placed over her body by Marcus Bailey. And the smell of decomp coming off of that was excessive.
I think we call them the cadaver dogs.
I think you're right.
This is a dog that looks for decaying flesh and human flesh. It doesn't look for anything else other than that.
As the dog makes its way around the home, its well-trained nose soon locks in on two specific rooms, Almanita's master bedroom and a spare bedroom down the hall.
It alerts to this room, and it alerts to this bedding, and it alerts to the different parts of the house, saying that a body had been stored there.
If the dog could talk, it would have definitely said, this has been here for a while.
Investigators suspect the transporting of the body caused the pungent odor to waft through the house, which explains why officers didn't smell the stench during their initial cursory search. When investigators searched the garage, it appears that Marcus had been preparing to make a fast getaway.
His clothing was all in bags next to the car in the garage. Inside the car were her credit cards, her military ID, and other things.
While officers continue their search of the premises, they know one burning mystery is finally over.
The evidence was telling us specifically that it was not a whodunit. It was obvious that he was the one that had done this, the one that had killed her.
That afternoon, police arrest 27-year-old Marcus Bailey for the death of his former lover, Almanita Smith.
He was arrested at the hospital. I was mad. I was really mad.
I don't think this is domestic violence, and that's something that I've kind of been on the fence about since it's happened. This was just murder, flat out, cold-blooded murder.
While family and friends try to come to grips with the chilling truth, the full spectrum of Marcus's betrayal would soon be illuminated and would shine a light on pure evil.
The dude just had to be nuts. Couldn't be no other explanation besides that you crazy. But then you get out and you live in life while she dead and gone. The fact that he picked up a woman and brought her back to her home was the part that was sickening.
On July 23, 2013, 27-year-old Marcus Bailey's murder trial gets underway inside a Columbia, South Carolina courtroom. Marcus stands accused of killing his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Army reservist Almanita Smith, in August of 2012, a crime that sickens the entire community.
I never would have thought I would be burying my baby. To know that someone, this young man, Marcus Bailey, decided to play God, he took a lot from me.
She had a bright future. She had the world. Anything she wanted to do, she could have done. And he took that.
Prosecutors say Almanita's murder was one final betrayal in a rocky romance rife with lies and false promises.
Marcus wasn't in the military as he led Almanita to believe. In fact, he was dishonorably discharged and wasn't working. And he was still married to another woman with a baby on the way. In a nutshell, Marcus wasn't the man Almanita thought he was.
Here we have two different people. You've got Almanita, whose military career is growing. She's getting commissioned as an officer in the Army. She just finished college. She owned her own home. She owned her own car. She was being successful and had a mission and a dream. And you've got Marcus. He's got nothing.
I think he was jealous of her.
And while Amanita's head was probably telling her to let Marcus go, it was her heart, prosecutors say, that enabled Marcus to remain in her home.
He didn't have anywhere to go. He didn't have any money. He didn't have a job, couldn't get a job. She was just helping him to get back on his feet.
I believe Amanita had drawn a line in the sand. You're going to mow the yard. You're living here for free. You're going to do this.
Prosecutors believe Marcus balked at Amanita's demands sometime on the night of August 16th, 2012.
They had guests that evening who came over on the 16th.
So, when are you going to mow the lawn?
I told you I'd get to that.
Get to it when?
And Marcus said that he wasn't going to mow the yard. It was his birthday. He didn't want to mow the grass the next day.
They were arguing during that time about him not doing his share around there and so forth. I believe that he probably murdered her that night. Probably after the friend left, they had an argument, and that's when it occurred.
I'm sick and tired of you always complaining all the damn time. You always damn complaining about every single thing.
We'll never know if it was just an argument that escalated or if he planned to kill her that night. And that we won't know because we weren't in the room, and I can't ask Amanita.
Do not. Yo!
Get off of me!
I said, what? Shut up!
She's not breathing. You didn't call 911. You didn't try to help her. You didn't try to save her. You just let her rot like she was nothing.
He didn't have her nagging at him anymore. He was able to do what he wanted to, and he did. He went and partied all week, and then he spent all her money.
I just think it was insane. It further cemented to me what his motive was. Like, you just wanted her money.
But prosecutors say the depths of Marcus's betrayal were truly sickening.
When he goes out and parties with the nightclub, he's picked up some random girl and had sex in Amanita's car. And then he goes and he picks up the clerk at the clothing store, and he takes her back and has sex with her in Amanita's home. We were able to validate that. She did have sex at that time, but she became suspicious a little bit about him because he wouldn't let her go upstairs.
Let's go upstairs.
And she's like, well, let's go upstairs to the bedroom. He wouldn't let her go upstairs.
We know that he had sexual relations with another female in the house when the body was upstairs.
In 21 years of law enforcement, that was absolutely the worst story and the worst thing that I'd ever heard. Being there, animal, sure, sheer animal.
This twisted trip finally came to an end on August 22nd.
The father had called him on the 22nd, had called 911, and then I think the rush kicked in that it was time to place the body out front.
A theory, prosecutors assert, that's bolstered by the trove of evidence that police recovered.
There was video footage of Marcus using Amanita's car and credit card. There were also positive hits by the police cadaver dog inside the home and on the blanket recovered inside the dryer. The evidence that Amanita died inside the house and was stored there for multiple days was overwhelming.
But despite what looks like an impossible case, Marcus's defense attorney does what he can under the circumstances.
It was the defense's idea that, yeah, I did do a lot of bad things. I may have cheated on this person. I may have used this woman's credit cards. I may have brought other women into the house, but that doesn't mean I killed her.
They wanted to attack the cadaver dog, and they wanted to attack the science, and they wanted to attack the neighbors and the witnesses and the friends, and they wanted to say all these people just, randomly had gotten together to kind of do this to Marcus and cause Marcus all this grief.
Finally, on July 31st, 2013, the case goes to the jury. 3 hours later, they return with a verdict: guilty.
Marcus Bailey was sentenced to 50 years in prison.
50 years sounds like there's a hope that you might get out. It just feels like there's hope that you might live to get out. And I don't want him to live to get out. I want him to die in prison.
He's a sociopath, calculated, cold-blooded killer is what he is. I hope he rots in jail. I really do.
For Amanita's friends and family, the punishment can never fit the crime, nor fully explain the actions of a wolf hiding in sheep's clothing.
Was it worth it? Was it worth taking her life? Was the outcome worth you taking somebody's soul so rare, so special, from this earth.
He didn't just take anybody. He took somebody that was special. She was an asset to everybody she touched, and that's who he took.
When you look at me, you don't see me. You see God, grace, and mercy. That sustains me every day. There are times I feel like I just want to lose my mind, but I know I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay.
But in the wake of this tragedy, while Amanita's family was still healing, the residents of Columbia, South Carolina were forced to weather another tough blow.
A boyfriend of Gabby Swainson's mother, the teenager that disappeared the same week that Amanita did, ultimately confessed to killing Gabby and was sentenced to 30 years in prison.
There was no connection between Gabby Swenson's case and Almanita's case, but the good news is both families got justice in the end.
And Ronald Michaels knew the layout well. He had made enough house calls there to navigate it in his sleep. The police found her later that evening. She was sitting in a chair, facing the window that looked out onto a small patch of winter dead grass. She hadn't been robbed. She hadn't been assaulted in the traditional sense. She had been executed. 6 shots from a .22 caliber weapon. One of them point blank to the back of the head. The silence of the church basement was now a heavy, suffocating thing. The routine white-collar fraud case had just become a cold-blooded murder investigation. Book 3, The Harvest of Lies. Chapter 7, The Dust Settles in Phoenix. Back in Arizona, the mirage had finally, fully evaporated. In August 1999, the state of Arizona finally acted on the warnings they had received years earlier. They issued a cease and desist order. The BFA was dead. 3 months later, it filed for bankruptcy, revealing a staggering loss of nearly $600 million. The impact on the community was like an earthquake. Thousands of retirees, people who had spent their entire lives saving for a quiet sunset in the desert, found themselves penniless. Bill Anderson sat in his garage. He wasn't the same man who had signed those papers 10 years ago. He was 80 now, his face a map of grief and stress. He had suffered to heart attacks in the months following the collapse. The doctor said his heart was literally breaking under the weight of the worry. To survive, Bill had gone back to work. He spent his days in the sweltering garage, carving wooden Uncle Sam ornaments and lawn decorations. He sold them at local craft fairs for $20 a piece, hoping it would be enough to cover the electric bill. Pat was working, too. At 75, she was a caretaker for people younger than herself, cleaning houses and changing linens to keep a roof over their heads. How could they use the church? Bill, she asked one evening as they sat over a meager dinner. How could they use the name of the Lord to take everything we worked for? Bill looked at his calloused hands, stained with wood glue and paint. They didn't see people. Pat, they only saw numbers. They thought they could outrun the truth and were the ones who got caught in the wreckage. In 2005, the longest criminal trial in Arizona history began. Bill Kratz and Tom Grabinski stood in the courtroom, looking like two grandfatherly figures caught in a misunderstanding. Their defense was a masterpiece of hubris. We didn't steal the money. We didn't buy yachts. We were just waiting for the market to recover. If the state hadn't interfered, everyone would be rich. The jury didn't see visionaries, they saw liars. Kratz was sentenced to 8 years in prison, Grabinski to 6. The investors recovered about 70 cents on every dollar, but the cost couldn't be measured in currency. The faith in the church, in their leaders, and in their own judgment was gone. Chapter 8, The Smoking Gun. In Chicago, the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office were building their own case. They had the motive Joyce Brannon was the key to Michael's prison cell. But they needed the weapon. They raided Michael's storage units. They found a cache of guns, but not the murder weapon. They found his Palm Pilot, with its chilling logs of his poorly performing interviews. Then they found the note in his car. It wasn't a grocery list. It was a handwritten schedule of the Sunday services at Joyce's church, with notes on when the basement would be most isolated. They found the shell casing a .22 caliber tucked under the passenger seat. And finally, the breakthrough. They discovered that 3 weeks before the murder, Michaels had his guns confiscated by the Skokie police because his license had expired. He had renewed it and in a stroke of dark irony retrieved his .22 caliber revolver exactly 3 days before Joyce Brannon was shot. On May 5th, 2005, the man who had been the saint of the North Side was convicted. He received 6 years for the fraud. For the murder of Joyce Brannon, he was sentenced to death. Epilogue: the cost of the truth. The stories of the desert and the city converge in a single, painful truth. Greed is a predatory animal that wears many masks. It finds the places where we are most vulnerable, our faith in God, our trust in our doctors, our hope for a secure future, and it builds its nest there. Bill Anderson died a few years after the trial, his spirit never fully recovering from the betrayal. Joyce Brannon died a hero, a woman who refused to let a friendship or a bribe silence the truth she had spent her life upholding as a nurse. In the end, the Baptist Foundation of Arizona and Dr. Ronald Michaels left behind a legacy of ruin. But they also left a reminder: the most dangerous lies are the ones that sound like a prayer. And the most dangerous men are the ones who believe their own lies are a service to a higher power. The end. The altar of greed. A novelization of faith, fraud, and fatal betrayal. Prologue: the mirage of righteousness. The Arizona sun was a relentless judge, baking the Phoenix asphalt until the horizon shimmered with the heat of 1,000 unsaid prayers. In this desert, water was life, but faith was the currency. For the thousands who gathered under the steeples of the Southern Baptist Church, the world was simple. There was the path of the righteous, and there was the wilderness. Bill Kratz understood this better than anyone. He didn't just walk the path, he paved it with gold, or at least the promise of it. To the elderly couples in the pews, Bill was more than an attorney. He was a financial Moses, leading them to a land of milk, honey, and 10% interest rates. They called it stewardship. It was a holy word, a word that bridged the gap between the kingdom of God and the security of a retirement account. But beneath the polished mahogany of the Baptist Foundation of Arizona's headquarters, a different kind of ritual was taking place. It wasn't a prayer meeting. It was a funeral for the truth. As the skyscrapers of Phoenix rose to touch the heavens, the foundation beneath them was turning to dust, held together only by the desperate charisma of a man who could not admit he had failed God. Part I, The Foundation of Sand. Chapter 1, The Shepherd and His Flock. Bill Anderson sat on his porch in the quiet suburbs of Phoenix, watching the sunset paint the Superstition Mountains in hues of bruised purple and gold. Beside him, his wife Pat gripped his hand. Her grip was a little tighter these days, a lingering reflex from the terror of the brain aneurysm that had nearly taken her 3 years prior. In those dark hours in the hospital, they had found solace in the church. They had been baptized late in life, a cleansing that felt like a new beginning. We're safe now, Bill, she whispered, her eyes reflecting the dying light. The Lord provided. Bill nodded. He was a retired plant manager, a man who measured his life in honest sweat and mechanical precision. He had spent 40 years making things work. Now, in the twilight of his life, he wanted things to stay working. They had invested everything $200,000 into the Baptist Foundation of Arizona BFA. It wasn't just a bank. It was an extension of their baptism. The brochures were glossy, filled with images of smiling seniors in low-income housing and children being fed in Baptist ministries. And the interest, 10%, while the world offered 6%. The BFA offered the blessings of a higher power. Its wise stewardship, the salesman had told them. His name was Thomas, a young man with a Bible in one hand and a ledger in the other. He had visited them in their home, sitting at their kitchen table and praying with them before discussing the certificates of deposit. You're not just saving for yourselves. You're investing in the gospel. Every dollar you put in helps build a nursing home or a new chapel. Across town, Robert Shaw was fighting a different kind of desert. A former car salesman, Robert had spent his 30s in a haze of bourbon and regret. He had found the bottom of many bottles before he found the doors of the Southern Baptist Church. I was a wreck, Robert would later tell the investigators. The drink had its teeth in me, but But the church, they took me in. They made my life easy again. For Robert, the BFA was his penance. He put $250,000 into the fund. Every commission from every sedan and truck he'd ever sold. He even set aside $60,000 for his daughter's education, envisioning her walking across a graduation stage. He saw the BFA as a fortress, a holy vault protected by the full faith and credit of the Southern Baptist Convention. He didn't know that the fortress was built on a sinkhole, and the Pope of the foundation was running out of miracles. Chapter 2, The Architect of Shadows. William Kratz was a man of impeccable tailoring and even more impeccable timing. At 34, he had taken the reins of a modest nonprofit and transformed it into a magnificent money machine for God. To Kratz, there was no conflict between a high-rise office and a humble heart. He sat in his posh Phoenix office, looking out over a city that was booming. He saw the burgeoning real estate market of the 1980s as a divine gift. He bought raw land, commercial developments, and residential plots, convinced that the desert would only ever grow. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, he would quote during board meetings, but the titles are held in escrow. But the Arizona real estate bubble didn't care about theology. When the market crashed in the early 90s, the BFAS assets plummeted. Raw land that was supposed to be worth millions became worthless scrub. A normal man would have admitted defeat. A righteous man would have confessed to his investors. But Bill Kratz was an ambitious man whose identity was tied to his success. He couldn't let the Pope of the Southern Baptists be seen as a failure. He began to believe his own myth that if he could just hold on long enough, God would provide a market recovery. He created Alo, Arizona land ownership. Alo was the bad bank, a shadowy off-book entity where Kratz buried the corpses of his bad investments. The BFA would sell worthless land to Alo at inflated prices. Alo would pay for it with notes receivable, paper promises. On the BFAS books, it looked like a profit. In reality, it was a circular flow of nothingness. to keep the interest payments going to people like Bill Anderson and Robert Shaw. Kratz needed new money. The BFA had become a classic Ponzi scheme, wrapped in the swaddling clothes of the gospel. Chapter 3, The Whistleblower's Burden. Kyle Tresh arrived in Phoenix in 1994 with a law degree and a heart full of idealism. The son of a preacher from Tulsa, Kyle wanted his career to mean something. Working for the BFA seemed like the ultimate synthesis of his skills and his soul. The morale was wonderful. Kyle remembered. We started every Monday with prayer. We thought we were the good guys. But as an attorney for the foundation, Kyle began to see the cracks. He saw the complex transactions between BFA and Allo. He saw Benefactor B, an entity that owed the foundation $70 million but had no assets. He saw the accountants sweating over ledgers that didn't add up. In April 1996, Kyle and first staff accountants reached their breaking point. They requested a meeting with Bill Kratz and his right-hand man, Tom Grabinski. The air in the conference room was thick with tension. Kyle laid out the evidence. This isn't a strategy, Bill. It's a deception. You're telling people we're profitable while we're hemorrhaging. Allo is stone broke. If the investors knew the truth, they'd pull their money tomorrow. Kratz didn't flinch. He looked at Kyle with the practiced patience of a shepherd dealing with a stray lamb. You're looking at the numbers, Kyle, but you're not looking at the vision. These are long-term assets. We are in a workout situation. We just need to keep the balls in the air until the market returns. Do you want to be the one to tell 11,000 seniors that their church failed them? I want to be the one who tells them the truth. Kyle replied. Kyle Tresh resigned that day. He wrote a scathing letter accusing them of fraud. But the BFA's prestige was in armor. Kratz dismissed the warnings as attacks from Satan, a spiritual warfare tactic that effectively silenced many internal critics. Chapter 4, The Sentinel of the Books. While the BFA was fighting off internal dissent, an outside force was beginning to stir. D. Grebel, a Phoenix area CPA, received a call from a worried client in January 1998. They want me to mortgage my house to buy more BFA certificates, the client told her. Dee began to dig. She pulled the BFA's audited financial statements audited by Arthur Andersen, the most prestigious firm in the world. On the surface, it looked clean. But Dee's eyes were trained to see the shadows. She saw the notes receivable from benefactor B. She went to the Corporation Commission and pulled the public records for Allo. When she saw the balance sheet, she nearly fell out of her chair. ALO had a negative net worth of over $100 million. It was a black hole. They're broke, she told a friend, her voice trembling. They are totally, completely broke. This is a fraud. Dee called Arthur Andersen 3 times. You must withdraw your audit opinion, she warned. The BFA is a house of cards. Her calls went unreturned. The prestigious firm, perhaps blinded by their own fees or the BFA's reputation, issued another clean bill of health. Armed with this clean audit, Kratz raised another $200 million from unsuspecting Christians in the final years. Chapter 5. The Bitter Harvest. The end came not with a bang, but with a series of investigative articles by Terry Green Sterling in the Phoenix New Times. She pieced together the money trail that Kyle Tresh had tried to expose years earlier. In August 1999, the state of Arizona finally pulled the plug. The bankruptcy was a massacre. Nearly $600 million was gone. The aftermath was devastating. Bill Anderson, the man who had survived a plant floor for 40 years, couldn't survive the guilt of losing his wife's security. He worked himself to exhaustion in his garage, carving lawn ornaments, trying to claw back a few dollars. The heart attacks followed in quick succession. He was worrying himself to death, Pat said, her voice breaking. He thought it was his fault. Robert Shaw had to sell his house. To pay for his daughter's tuition, the former car salesman took a job washing cars at a rental agency. He stood in the Phoenix heat, scrubbing suds off hubcaps, his mind replaying the sermons of Bill Kratz. I didn't just lose money, Robert said. I lost my relationship with God. I look at a steeple now, and all I see is a lie. Part 2, The Doctor's Shadow. Chapter 6, The Foot Doctor of Chicago. 2,000 miles away, in the gray, windy streets of Chicago, another predator was using trust as a weapon. Dr. Ronald Michaels was a podiatrist who understood the value of a friendship. Michaels specialized in the elderly. He made house calls to nursing homes and private bungalows. He was the kind of doctor who would stay for tea, ask about the cat, and bring a sandwich for a lonely widow. He was charming, attentive, and seemingly tireless. He was also billing Medicare for hundreds of phantom surgeries. He would bill for 3 surgeries on the same toe in a month. Investigator Pete Tyler noted it was anatomically impossible. Over 7 years, Michaels siphoned $1.7 million from the system. He targeted the most vulnerable, those with dementia, those with no family left to check the explanation of benefits forms. To them, he was a saint. To the government, he was a ghost. But by 1998, the ghost was leaving a trail. Tyler noticed that Michaels was the highest paid podiatrist in the state. He began a review of the billings, and the glaring fraud became impossible to ignore. Chapter 7, The Downward Spiral. Behind the professional facade, Ronald Michaels was unraveling. A messy divorce had stripped him of his suburban home. He had developed a dependency on prescription drugs and alcohol. His lifestyle was expensive, and as the Medicare payments were suspended pending investigation, the walls began to close in. I have lost everything, he wrote in a desperate letter. I am at the lowest point of my life. He was eventually forced to live in his car, a once prominent doctor reduced to sleeping in a sedan. But even as his life crumbled, his arrogance remained. He started coaching his patients. He gave them scripts, telling them exactly what to say to the feds. Tell them I made very tiny incisions, he whispered to an 80-year-old woman. Tell them you're happy with my work. Most of his patients, bound by a sense of loyalty to the man who brought them sandwiches, stayed silent. But Joyce Brannon was different. Chapter 8. The Nurse in the Basement. Joyce Brannon was 54, a former ICU nurse with a sharp mind and a moral compass that hadn't been weathered by age. She lived in the basement of the Bethany Evangelical Lutheran Church, where she served as the caretaker. When Agent Renee Reyes showed her the billing record 70 surgeries listed for her own feet, Joyce didn't just get angry, she got clinical. Honey, she told the agent, I'm a nurse. I know what a surgery feels like, and I know what a scar looks like. This man never did a single operation on me. He just trimmed my nails and chatted. Joyce Brannon agreed to testify. She was the government's gold standard witness alert, professional and incorruptible. Micos knew it. He called her. He used the same friendship tactic that had worked for years. I have family. Joyce, think about my children. You should have thought about that before you did this. She told him, this is wrong, Ronald. Chapter 9, The Sunday Execution. The murder was as calculated as a medical procedure. On a Sunday evening in 2001, after the last parishioners had left the Bethany Evangelical Lutheran Church, the killer entered through the side door. He knew the building. He knew Joyce would be alone in her basement apartment. He found her sitting in her chair. He didn't say a word. He fired 6 shots from a .22 caliber revolver into her back and head. 1 shot was fired at point-blank range, a signature of cold-blooded intent. The discovery of her body sent shockwaves through the U.S. Attorney's Office. Sean Berkowitz, the prosecutor, knew immediately that this was no random act of violence. She was scheduled to testify in 3 days. Berkowitz said, this was a strike at the heart of the justice system. Chapter 10, The Digital Evidence. The investigation into Micos shifted into overdrive. The feds searched a storage unit and found a cache of weapons, but not the .22. Then they looked into his firearms license. Just 3 days before the murder, Micos had reclaimed a .22 caliber revolver from the Skokie Police Department after renewing his expired permit. In his car, the same car he slept in, they found a shell casing. they found a box of .22 ammunition, and then they found his Palm Pilot. It was a chilling record of a premeditated hunt. Maikos had recorded the names of the agents, the questions they asked his patients, and the ratings of the interviews. He had noted the Sunday service hours of Joyce's church. He had planned the execution of his star witness to save himself from a fraud charge. Epilogue: The Weight of the Truth. In 2005, the bill finally came due for both Arizona and Chicago. Bill Kratz and Tom Grabinski stood trial in the longest criminal case in Arizona history. Kratz was found guilty of fraud, but acquitted of theft. The jury didn't think he was personally profiting, but rather pridefully protecting an institution. He was sentenced to 8 years, Grabinski to 6. The investors received a settlement from Arthur Anderson, recouping about 70% of their money. But for people like Robert Shaw, the 30% remaining was the cost of a daughter's dream. I still go to church, Robert said, but I sit in the back, and I never, ever talk to the men in suits. In Chicago, Dr. Ronald Maikos faced a jury of his peers. The circumstantial evidence, the gun, the timing, the Palm Pilot was overwhelming. He was convicted of the fraud, and then he was convicted of the murder of Joyce Brannon. His sentence: death. Today, Maikos sits on death row in Terre Haute, Indiana. He is a man who once saved feet, but ended up destroying a life in a basement sanctuary. The desert heat remains in Phoenix. The wind still howls through the Chicago neighborhoods. And the victims of the altar of greed are still trying to find their way back to a faith that doesn't come with a price tag. Joyce Brannon is remembered not as a victim, but as a hero. She was the one who refused to lie for a sandwich and a cup of tea. She was the one who stood up. The end. Betrayal of the Faithful. A novel based on true events. Prologue: The Weight of a Promise. Trust is the currency of the soul. In the shimmering heat of the Arizona desert, it is as precious as water, a rare commodity that people guard with their lives until they find a well they believe is holy. In the biting winds of a Chicago winter, trust is the only warmth an elderly heart has left when the family has moved away and the bones grow brittle. But trust is also a weapon for those who know how to wield it. A Bible verse can be more effective than a locksmith's pick, and a doctor's white coat can hide a darker stain than any surgical spill. When you tell a man you are doing God's work, he stops looking at your hands and starts looking at the heavens. That is the moment his pocket is easiest to pick. This is the story of two men who traded in the most sacred of commodities, faith. One built a kingdom on the shifting sands of false promises, using the tides of the faithful to fuel a machine of vanity. The other carved a fortune out of the feet of the dying, turning a profession of healing into a ritual of theft. Both learned, too late, that when the bill for greed finally comes due, it is not paid in gold, but in the blood of the innocent and the shattered lives of those who dared to believe. Part 1, The Mirage in the Desert. Chapter 1, The Architect of Dreams. The year was 1982. And Phoenix was a city gasping for breath under a sky so blue it looked painted. It was a place of rapid expansion, where the desert was being pushed back by sprawling stucco suburbs and turquoise swimming pools. At the center of this transformation stood William Kratz. At 34, Kratz was the embodiment of the New South's success. He was a brilliant attorney, a man whose speech was seasoned with just enough legal jargon to sound authoritative and just enough scripture to sound anointed. When he took over the Baptist Foundation of Arizona BFA, he didn't see a nonprofit. He saw a sleeping giant. The Lord doesn't want his children to be poor. Tom Kratz said one afternoon, his voice echoing in the mahogany-lined boardroom of the BFA headquarters. He was looking out at the Camelback Mountain, his reflection in the glass overlaying the landscape. Tom Grabinski, the Foundation's in-house counsel, adjusted his tie. He was a man of shadows and fine print, the perfect technician for Kratz's grand design. The convention expects us to fund missions, Bill, not to play the market. We aren't playing, Tom. We are stewarding, Kratz corrected, turning around. His eyes burned with a quiet, holy fire that made dissent feel like blasphemy. Think of the senior housing we can build, the food banks, the hungry children. We can take the widow's mite and turn it into a mountain of gold. All we need is the capital. And who better to provide it than the people who already trust us? The plan was elegant, daring, and fundamentally broken from the start. They called it stewardship investments. They told the faithful that by loaning their savings to the BFA, they weren't just earning a 10% return, nearly double what the local banks offered. They were building the kingdom of God. Kratz convinced himself he was a visionary. If the real estate market dipped, he would simply wait for God to raise it back up. In the meantime, he created a secret entity, a bad bank designed to swallow the foundation's losses and hide them from the prying eyes of the flock. He wasn't lying. He told himself he was merely managing the timing of a miracle. Chapter 2: The Widow's Mite. In a quiet suburb of Phoenix, Bill and Pat Anderson sat at their small kitchen table, the scent of morning coffee lingering in the air. For them, the Southern Baptist Church wasn't just a place of worship. It was their life's anchor. 3 years ago, Pat had looked death in the face. A brain aneurysm had threatened to take her, but she had survived. In the quiet hours of her recovery, they had pledged everything to the Lord. Look at this brochure, Bill, Pat said, her finger tracing the image of a serene retirement community. It says here that our money stays in the community. It builds houses for people like us. And look at the rate, 10%. Bill, a retired plant manager who knew the value of a hard-earned dollar, squinted at the paper. It's backed by the Southern Baptist Convention, Pat, and it's audited by Arthur Anderson. That's the gold standard. If we can't trust the Baptists, who can we trust? They weren't greedy people. They just wanted to be good stewards. They took their life savings, $200,000, every penny saved from decades of factory work and careful budgeting, and moved it into the BFA. They felt a profound sense of peace. They were doing well by doing good. Across town, Robert Shaw was making a similar choice. A car salesman who had found his way back from the brink of alcoholism through the church's doors. Robert saw the BFA as a way to secure his daughter's future. He put in $250,000, including the $60,000 he had meticulously set aside for her college tuition. The salesmen who visited their homes were master storytellers. They didn't talk about risk or liquidity. They talked about planting seeds and reaping the harvest. They used the language of the pulpit to sell the products of the pit. For over a decade, the harvest seemed plentiful. The checks arrived on time. The mirage was indistinguishable from reality. Chapter 3, The Whistleblower's Burden. By 1994, the BFA had grown into a massive financial engine, but its internal gears were grinding with the grit of 1,000 lies. Kyle Tresh, a young, idealistic attorney and the son of a preacher from Tulsa, joined the legal team thinking he was entering a sanctuary. I want my professional skills to serve a higher purpose, he told his wife on his first day. But the sanctuary was a hall of mirrors. As Tresh began to review the transactions between the BFA and Allo, he felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the office air conditioning. The profits the BFA was boasting about were ghosts. They were created by selling devalued land back and forth between related companies at inflated prices. It was a classic Ponzi scheme, but one performed in a choir loft. Tresh walked into Grabinski's office, a stack of ledgers in his hand. Tom, we need to talk about these notes from Allo. They're unsecured. This company has a negative net worth of $100 million. How can we tell investors we're profitable? Grabinski didn't look up from his desk. Real estate is